Hi, my name is Alex Hopkins with Hopkins Agriculture, and today I'm going to be showing you how I like to set my Buffalo 6300 to cultivate organic corn for the first pass. Now this corn was planted on June 1st and June 2nd, and then we rotary hoed it on June 5th, which would be day 3 and 4. And then we went ahead and cultivated it on June 27th, which would be day 25 or 26, and that is where you're going to be seeing the video from today. Now, when I'm cultivating and demonstrating on how to set, obviously these are very broad ideas. I try to get the gist down. I'm not going to be able to show every half-inch adjustment I make, but you can carry these principles on across the cultivator to get the desired result that you want. I would also like to apologize because I know the wind was really messing with my mic and the volume was up and down based on how close I was to the ground or how the wind was affecting me. I am not a professional videographer, but I did my best to document how to set your cultivator. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and take you out to the field. So the first thing I'm going to do when I get into the field is I'm going to get lined up and I'm going to set my toolbar down and pull forward a few feet and try to get my parallel linkage frames set so that they are slightly canted forward towards the toolbar at a slight angle, something like that. Between there and level. If you have them tilted forward a little bit, it'll help to pull the cultivator into the ground, and that way you get a little better ground penetration. If I'm in a corner, I like to roll my third link back so that it pushes the sweeps into the hard ground where I've done a lot of driving. Otherwise, at this point, I'll set my third link pretty close to level. And we're running Gnusse third links that are hydraulically adjustable. I highly recommend them. I believe it's Gnusse. Look them up online. They make cultivating a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and pull forward a few feet and make sure I get my toolbar height set. So I'll go ahead and I'll stop and I'll make sure that I get out, take a look, and I'm also going to evaluate to see what sort of a job I'm doing at this point. So I'm going to walk up, and as you can see, that's kind of where I like to run it. We're just slightly bent down at an angle from perfectly parallel. So I'm going to also go ahead and take a look at what sort of a job I'm doing. Is the head lands, so it's kind of hard and awfully weedy. So some of the things I'm noticing, my sweeps here behind the tires aren't doing a very good job of getting in the ground because of that hard compaction. Compared to a row where we haven't seen compaction, you cannot see that whatsoever here. It's totally buried, so it's doing a better job. We're going to have to adjust some things. Same with the rows behind where the 24 row equipment has run. We plant with the 24 row, so these two rows here are going to be running in my drive tire and then my dual for where the planter went, and also our rotary hoe tractor runs on the 24 row pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust some things. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back here a little ways away from the cultivator, preferably not in the corner because it'll be really hard, and I'm going to just go ahead and evaluate what sort of work or job this thing is doing. And this outside row looks like it's actually getting in the ground, taking out most of the weeds. Its neighbor's doing the same. Looks like we've got good ground penetration. These weeds are actually cut off. Continuing, looks pretty good. nice job. Now as I start to get behind the tires of the tractor here, I start to notice that it's not doing as good of a job of getting in the ground. Now this row looks pretty good, but its neighbor here is not getting the tips of the wings down in. So you just take a look. Right here, this guy's still exposed. Center row's doing a good job. Same problem over on this guy. Let's see if we can find some weeds here. Like down on the sides, those guys got chopped out. But like here we have a plant that's still very much intact with the soil. And this is hard next to it. So we're not getting in the ground. We need to be getting underneath of these guys to make sure they get pulled out, because they're not actually broken off. Same with behind the 24 row pattern. These sweeps are actually out of the ground. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to walk around to the front and I'm going to see, is my gauge tire actually making it all the way down. And these are actually making contact with the ground and the soil. They're not loose. A lot of times what I see is that these stabilizer discs are actually running on top of that hard compaction layer, holding the sweep out of the ground. And in that case, your gauge tire will actually be out of the ground. It'll be free spinning. It won't be able to actually make it in. But it seems like I've got it actually going all the way down. So I'm going to go ahead and drop these sweeps in just a little bit, just moving the sweep. And I'll evaluate the same thing behind the tractor and see if I need to just move the sweep or if the stabilizer disc is actually holding it out of the ground. Something important to note is that when I go ahead and loosen this and I drop it down, I'm dropping it down based on the markings on the shank here, about 1 inch. And when I get done and I'm going to tighten it, I'm actually going to pull back on the shank to tighten. Because if I leave it forward, these things actually tend to pull back in the soil naturally, and they tend to get loose and fall out. So I'm pulling back while I tighten. Now that I have my sweeps adjusted to where I've dropped them down, I'm going to go ahead and set down and pull forward again and see what sort of job I'm doing now. Now as I move across the cultivator, I'm doing a lot better job now. This soil's nice and loose. These weeds, there's a little bit of clods, but for the most part, this is pretty nice, loose soil. And it's doing a really good job of killing the weeds and getting them brought up. I'm not missing stuff if I dig down here. This is all nice and loose. So I like what I see so far. Now this row, I noticed some clods, and it looks like he's kind of sank in there a little deep, if you ask me, because there's no compaction. He's probably going to town, so we might be able to bring him up just a little bit, and so that we aren't bringing up so many clods. Behind the duals here, we're doing a beautiful job not bringing slabs up, just nice, even, crumbly soil. But now you notice behind the tire, I've got a lot of big slabs. And this is to be somewhat expected because behind those drive tires, there's just lots of compaction and it's hard to mitigate that. But I'm thinking that maybe I could try to raise it up a little bit and see if I could do a little better job, not bring up so many wet clods. I just got to be careful I don't bring it up too much and run into the problem I had before where it wasn't going in the ground enough. I still seem to be just a little shallow here behind where the 24 row pattern is. These weeds are still attached. They've been kind of maimed, but they're not necessarily dug out. So I'm going to go ahead and drop those guys in a little bit more too. Behind the drive tire is worse than behind where the dual was. Now before I drop in that sweep anymore, I wanted to come up and check this gauge tire to see, and sure enough, it is actually loose. So it's not the sweep's fault as of this very moment. It's trying to go in deep. It's more or less because that stabilizer is holding us out of the ground and it's pushing that gauge tire up. This one's doing a little better job of staying down. But one thing I'm going to do, because I don't want to just keep dropping it in indefinitely, is I'm going to go ahead and I could pitch this sweep foot forward just a little bit, so that it's towed forward just a little more, so it helps try to pull itself in the ground. I've got it just a little bit behind flush right now. So for that guy, because he's behind the drive tire of the planter, I'm going to go ahead and tip it forward to try to help pull it in. I'm going to tow it forward so it's about flush. I don't like to go any more than that if I don't have to. Nice crumbly soil. So we really got good penetration now, and we're doing a good job of getting the cultivator in the ground. We got some slabs behind the drive tire where the planter went, but overall this soil looks pretty good and it looks like it's working up pretty nice. Ideally, every row would look like this, where it's nice and flat and the soil is just really, really crumbly. There's little to no weeds because of it. We're doing a good job moving some soil in around the base of the plant. but unfortunately compaction prevents that from being every row. Now that I'm pretty happy with my ground penetration, I'm going to go ahead and evaluate the shields to see what I think of the job they're doing. Maybe get them down a little tighter and I can pick up a little more speed. This row still looks like he's a little slabby and a little deeper. I'll keep an eye on it, but I kind of want to get out of the headlands here and get out into the field and see where it does better there. So now if you notice, I have a huge amount of space between the shield and the ground, so I'm going to go ahead and work on setting these all down because they're way too high up. So I finally got the cultivator adjusted to where I wanted. I made a few small tweaks here and there, kind of some depth issues, you know. I had some of my sweeps towed a little farther forward than I liked. I was bringing up some slabs in the middle, and I went ahead and flattened them out, even dropped some of them down. I did have a couple units that were just too shallow altogether. I went ahead and cranked up the gauge tire, and I determined that by looking at the cutaway discs. If your cutaways are not going deep enough, and the sweep's not going deep enough, and the stabilizer isn't holding the gauge tire out of the ground, then I know that I need to go ahead and address the whole entire unit. So I went ahead and dropped a couple down a few turns, and I've got it set to where I like it pretty good here going across the field. I also got my shields set after you saw me adjust them there, and they look like they're doing a pretty good job where they're at, so I don't think I'm going to need to tweak them too much more. I'll probably go out here in a little bit now that I'm going across the first pass across the field and evaluate each individual row to see what I think it needs. If I need one row with a little more dirt in it, then I will go ahead and adjust it from there, because you can't treat this cultivator as one standard across the whole entire thing. You got to adjust it for each individual row because they're all so much different. So I'm doing just a beautiful job of laying that soil up right up in the row. In the middle here, this soil's just like powder. So now that I'm off the headlands, I'm doing a really nice job. Even in the tire track rows, you can't hardly even tell where they are. There's a little bit of slabbing in them, but not horrible. Just a couple guys here. A little weed there. Probably too close to the row. But I am going to do a last final check. I'm going to look at every shield. I'm going to evaluate how it does for its individual row. And I'm also going to check my cutaways, make sure that none of them are favoring a row. So I'll start with the cutaways. As you can see, that's rows nice and centered, so I'm just going to check that on all of them. Make sure no single cutaway disc is too close to the row. Might have to move it. This one here on the left might be just a little close to the row, but it's honestly not hurting anything, so I'm going to leave it be for the moment. Okay, then in terms of dirt flow, I'm going to walk back away from the cultivator where I had some speed. Now that I've got everything set, I'm running about 7 miles an hour right now on this nice tall corn. I'm going to take a look at each row, and I'm happy with that one. I'm getting enough dirt. That one looks like I'm doing a pretty nice job. That one the same. Yeah, I'm pretty satisfied altogether, so I'm going to go ahead and cultivate.